Hello, welcome to Respiration and Plants. We are going to, just like the previous video, we're going to do a quick revision slash studying of about respiration and plants. We will be going through NCRT, each and every line of NCRT, the trick questions which can be asked from NCRT, all the essential points. And after this, I'll be releasing another video related to respiration. All the stuff which is not in NCRT but will be very useful, will come in handy if at all some question has to come outside NCRT. So that's it. So we can start. This is a 10 to 12 page, around 12 page chapter. Yes. So all of us breathes to live. But why is breathing so essential to life? What happens when we breathe? Also, do living organisms, including plants, might everyone breathe? If so, how? All living organisms need energy for carrying out their daily life activities, true. Be it absorption, transport, movement, reproduction, or even breathing. Where does all this energy come from? We know we eat food for energy, but how is this energy taken from food? How is this energy utilized? Do all foods give the same amount of energy? Do plants eat? Where do plants get their energy from? And the microorganisms for their energy requirements, do they eat food? You may wonder at several questions raised about. They maybe they seem to be disconnected, but in reality, they are all very much connected. Let us see how they are connected. All the energy required for life processes is obtained from oxidation from macromolecules that we call food. So all the energy, so remember there is no exception, and it is from oxidation of molecules called food. Only green plants and cyanobacteria, this is important. Don't go for other options. Only green plants and cyanobacteria can prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. They trap light energy and convert it into chemical energy that is stored in the bonds. We must remember that in green plants too, not all cells, tissues, or organs photosynthesize. Only specific stuffs photosynthesize. And what do they contain? They contain chloroplasts that are often located in superficial layers. Where are they located in superficial layers? So that they're able to get more amount of sunlight, like not any obstruction in their path. Carry out photosynthesis. Hence, even in green plants, all other organs and tissues that are non-green need food for oxidation. Hence, food has to be translocated to all non-green plants. Animals are heterotrophic, they obtain food from plants directly or indirectly, herbivores and carnivores respectively. Saprophytes depend on dead and decaying matter. What is important to recognize is ultimately all the food that is respired comes from photosynthesis. This chapter deals with the cellular respiration or the mechanism of breakdown of food materials. What is cellular respiration? Breakdown of food materials within the cell to release energy and trapping of this energy for synthesis of ATP. Photosynthesis, of course, takes place within the chloroplast, whereas breakdown of complex molecules takes place in cytoplasm and in mitochondria. The breaking of the CC bonds of the complex compounds through oxidation within the cells, leading to the release of considerable amount of energy is called respiration. So we are defining respiration. How are we defining? There are complex compounds. We're breaking the carbon-carbon bonds, and what bonds are we breaking? This is also important. Not carbon-hydrogen bonds. The energy majorly comes from carbon-carbon bonds of the complex compounds. This is something you should note. This can be asked, leading to the release of considerable amount of energy. It's called respiration. Okay, the compounds that are oxidized during this process are called respiratory substrates. Like whether it is fat, whether it's carbohydrates, whether it is proteins, those are called respiratory substrates. Usually, carbohydrates are oxidized to release energy, but proteins, fats, and even organic acids can be used as respiratory substrates in some plants under certain conditions. During oxidation within a cell, all the energy contained in respiratory substrates is not released. All the energy is not released free into the cell or in a single step. All the energy is not released free into the cell. Free into the cell, now you can't manage now. Like it is just like it will become an explosion. It is a difference between a nuclear reactor and a nuclear bomb. So you can't release it just like that. You have to slowly extract from it. That's why it's not in a single step. That's why it's not in a single step. It releases in a slow, stepwise reactions controlled by enzymes. And it's trapped as chemical energy in the form of ATP. Hence, it is important to understand that energy released by oxidation in respiration is not used directly, but is used to synthesize ATP, which is broken down whenever energy is required. Hence, ATP is energy currency. We already know this from from younger ages itself. This energy trapped in ATP is utilized in various energy requiring processes of the organism and the carbon skeleton produced during respiration. carbon skeleton produced during respiration is used as precursors for biosynthesis of molecules in other cells. What are they saying? Like when you are taking the carbohydrates and and when you proceed with the process, there will be some intermediates. Now, those intermediates are used in the biosynthesis of other molecules. Like you have heard about the process called gluconeogenesis, right? That is, glucose is newly being generated, gluconeogenesis. You are generating this from fats or protein. So how are you generating your first metabolizing fat or protein to a certain state, to certain carbon skeleton? From that, you're again producing glucose. This is what they're trying to say. We'll read about this in the later parts. So, like, attending a more important question, since this is botany, we are concerning more about plants here. Do plants breathe? Well, the answer is not so directly. Yes, plants require oxygen for respiration and they also give out carbon dioxide. Hence, plants have a system in place that ensure the availability of oxygen. Plants, unlike animals, have no specialized organs. This is important. They have no specialized organ for gaseous exchange, but they have stomata and lenticels for this purpose. This is important. This is important. What are they saying? Plants have no specialized organs. 1 minute. This is not nice. We'll go for this. Plants have no specialized organs for gaseous exchange, but they have stomata and lenticels for this purpose. There are several reasons. We have to remember the reasons. We have to know these statements. Each plant part takes care of its own gaseous needs. This is important. This is the first reason. What is the first reason? Each part takes care of its own gaseous need. It has some mechanism to derive it. So you don't have to take gas from one point and distribute it. That is the first point. There is very little transport of gases from one plant part to another. Important. These statements they can ask anyway. Second, plants do not present great demands for exchange of gas. Next, roots, stems, and leaves respire at rates far lower than animals do. Only during photosynthesis, okay, this is also very important. Only during photosynthesis are large volumes of gases exchanged. Each leaf is adapted to take care of its own need. Each leaf is adapted to take care of its own need during the periods of photosynthesis. When cells photosynthesize, availability of oxygen is not a problem. Availability of oxygen, not a problem. Since oxygen is released within the cell. Third, the distance that gases must diffuse even in large. Distance, even in large bulky plants, is not great. Each living cell in a plant is located Each living cell is located quite close to the surface of the plant. This is true for leaves, but what about thick woody stems and roots? In stems, the living cells are organized in thin layers inside beneath the bark. They also have openings called lenticels. Living cells, thin layers beneath the bark. They also have openings called lenticels. The cells in the interior are dead and provide only mechanical support. How can we relate this to anatomy which we have studied? See, outer layer we have this periderm. Inside periderm we have secondary phloem. What have we studied about phloem and xylem? In phloem, except phloem fibers, everything is living. In xylem, except xylem parenchyma, everything is dead. Majority is dead. So internal we have xylem and internal majority is dead. That's why we don't have to diffuse that long. Okay. The cells in the interior are dead and provide only mechanical support. Cells in interior are dead and provide only mechanical support. Thus, most cells of the plants have at least a part of the surface in contact with air. All these are NCERT statements from which they will directly pose a question. So you have to be very confident in these. First thing, what are we doing? First thing, plants have no specialized organ system. First is this like the statement, and then you're giving reason. What is the first reason? Every part can take care of its own things. That is the first reason. So what are the two statements in the first reason? Each plant part takes care of its own gaseous need. What is the second statement? There is very little transport. Since each takes care of its own needs, there is very little transport. Same sentence only. Please don't get confused in this. And the second statement is the demand. We don't have that much amount of respiratory rate at all. There is no demand. And root, stems, and leaves far lower rates. What is the main reason you can think for this? Humans and animals, they move. That much energy is required for motility. Each part is moving. Like you're moving your hand, you're moving your vocal cords, you're having so much energy expenditure in those areas. Whereas plants are stationary now. They don't have that much amount of energy need. That is why they respire at very low rate. And since they respire at very low rate, they have very little demand. So the next statement in under the same reason is during photosynthesis. Only during photosynthesis, large volumes of gases are exchanged. And where is photosynthesis taking place? In leaf. Leaf is in very close contact with air, and leaves are thin, and leaves can take care of their own respiratory need because they release oxygen. I mean, since oxygen is released within the cell, they do not have a requirement for oxygen transport for respiration. And what is the third thing? Third reason. The third reason is the distance or how close it is to the external environment. So summing up, yes. So what have they said? We are talking about living cells. All the living cells are quite close. And what is the thickest part of the tree we see is the stem. And in the stem also, all the living cells are in the external part. So the distance for diffusion is very low. That is what is the third reason. Yes. And there is the other point is that is the openings are lenticels and the interior is dead. Mechanical support, we've already seen this, so we are moving on. Okay. This is also facilitated by the loose packing of parenchyma cells. This is also important. What is also facilitated? The oxygen exchange, the gaseous exchange is also facilitated by loose packing of parenchyma cells because in the air, they provide a network of air spaces. Okay, they provide a interconnected network of air spaces. The complete combustion of glucose, which produces carbon dioxide and water and as end products, yields energy, most of it is given out as heat. If this energy is to be useful to the cell, it should be able to utilize it to synthesize other molecules that the cell requires. The strategy that the plant uses is to catabolize the glucose molecule. Catabolize means break down the glucose molecule in such a way that not all of them are liberated as heat. The key is to oxidize glucose not in one step, but in several small steps, enabling some steps to just be large enough so that the energy released can be coupled to ATP synthesis. That is, the energy will be just enough for synthesizing an ATP. How this is done essentially is the story of respiration, which we're going to study now. During the process of respiration, oxygen is utilized, and carbon dioxide, water, energy are released as products. The combustion requires oxygen, but some cells live where oxygen may or may not be available. So what happens to those organisms where oxygen is not available? We'll see about that. Anaerobic respiration. There are sufficient reasons to believe that the first cells on the planet that lacked oxygen. We'll see about this in evolution in the next year. Even among present-day living organisms, we know several organisms which are adapted to anaerobic conditions. Some of these organisms are facultative anaerobic. That is, they can live only. They do all the stuff only without oxygen. They have to be anaerobic. That is what is obligate anaerobe. So some are obligate anaerobe. In any case, all living organisms retain the enzymatic machinery. They retain the enzymatic machinery to partially oxidize glucose without the help of oxygen. That is, whether they are facultative anaerobe, whether they are obligate anaerobe, or whether they are aerobe. Everything there is one common pathway. What is that pathway? Glucose to pyruvic acid, the commonly known, the famous pathway, the glycolysis pathway.